Bonsoir et bienvenue. Welcome. Good evening. I am happy to be here tonight to present our budget consultation. Je suis content de présenter notre consultation prébudgétaire. With me today, I have our new treasurer, André Raffolici. Bienvenue à la ville de Côte-Saint-Luc. Welcome to the city of Côte-Saint-Luc.
Merci.
We're presenting, we have a few residents in the audience and those joining on Zoom and also those who will be watching the recorded version of this presentation. We thank you for joining us. The goal today is to give some background on the budget, and the story I often tell is that we used to do a presentation in December. On faisait une présentation dans le mois de décembre, and at that point, okay. At that point, sorry, just a bit of an echo. Just over the, yeah. So at that point, the budget was already finalized, and it was really too late to get feedback from residents. The goal is to do this now. Either, we've done this sort of June, July, August, but the goal is to do this during the summer, where there's still time to get feedback from residents. So I'll continue. Je vais continuer avec l'ordre du jour. Alors, on va commencer avec le but de la consultation, la raison qu'on fait cette consultation, le calendrier du processus budgétaire, et ça serait notre directeur, André, qui va faire cette partie. Un aperçu du budget de fonctionnement. This is the operating budget. Après, aperçu sur le budget d'investissement. This is the capital projects. Et après, André va parler sur la diffusion de l'information et on va prendre des questions. For those of you, pour celles et ceux qui sont à la maison, you can raise your hand and ask questions, or if you are watching this after in the recorded version, feel free to email us at finance@cotesaintluc.org. finance@commercial-cotesaintluc.org. I'll give some of the purpose of the consultation. So the goal of the consultation is for the city, again, to get better, for the public to get a better understanding of the process in terms of making the budget, how we do it. And Andre will talk a bit about the budget building calendar in a moment. And again, to get feedback from you, the residents. This year, there's going to be some tough decisions, and we'll talk a bit about some of the budget constraints and issues we're dealing with in a few minutes. But the goal is to get your feedback and insight on how we give out some of the discretionary budget, as well the capital investments. So these are for larger projects. You've seen, for example, the roadwork on Cavendish, on Fleet. I know we've received some feedback. Residents were upset about the inconvenience in terms of extra traffic, but the goal is in terms of long-term for the roads to be better paved and hopefully less issues with traffic moving forward once it's done. And again, for us, it's to hear your feedback on how you want the information shared. One of the things we tried to do, and this was, I would say, the idea of our previous treasurer, Angela Marino, who's in the room with us. Merci, Angela, d'être venue. So this was an idea of our previous treasurer and something I worked on as well to try to get more information to residents. But of course, we're always interested in your feedback in terms of the format of the information. Maintenant, je vais donner la parole à notre trésorier.
Merci, Steven. Donc, comme vous voyez à l'écran, le processus de préparation budgétaire commence dès le mois de mai et de juin avec consultation de tous les directeurs et avec la préparation par rapport à l'orientation du conseil et les visions du conseil. Donc, ça suit au mois de juillet-août pour la détermination des principes directeurs et des priorités que le conseil municipal projette. Ça continue jusqu'en septembre au niveau des prévisions salariales et en ce qui concerne les contrats qui sont à durée déterminée. Par la suite, il y a la préparation des budgets des départements. Donc, il y a eu une rencontre avec les chefs des départements pour déterminer leur budget à chacun d'eux. On continue avec le mois de novembre pour l'examination des projets d'investissement et le plan triennal d'immobilisation, ce qu'on appelle dans le jargon le PTI. Puis en novembre, le projet de budget est présenté au conseil municipal. Par la suite, il y aura la prévision des taux de taxation et le taux de taxe de l'eau. Et en décembre, on arrive avec l'examen des budgets de fonctionnement, l'opération, et le budget de immobilisation par le conseil pour pouvoir faire l'adoption au mois de décembre. Donc, par la suite, ben, le processus recommence en mai, juin, etc., etc.
Merci beaucoup. So now I'll talk a bit about some of the orientations and guiding principles in terms of the budget. So the first is an obvious one. We want to maintain a balance between revenue and expenditures. We know that property taxes cover the majority of our revenue for the city, but we want to try to minimize the impact or the additional burden on those taxpayers. We're looking at the financial availability of programs. Does it make sense to put it in place, and what is the long-term cost? We want to look at funding from outside sources, from federal and provincial government, and if we can, to use our own internal funding. So in terms of capital investments, there's two ways we can do it. We can either borrow money or we can use our own fund, which is called the working fund, where we sort of save money and use it for smaller or medium-sized projects, generally ones that can be done within a year or two. We also want to look at ongoing costs. If we have new construction or upgrades of city facilities, what will that cost us in the long run? Of course, we want to continue to be efficient and transparent, and we want to make sure that we're monitoring the process throughout, and that's a function of our audit committee that meets on a regular basis, roughly every 6 weeks throughout the year, to ensure that things are being done properly.
Donc, quelle est la différence entre le budget de fonctionnement et le budget d'investissement? En d'autres termes, le budget de fonctionnement, c'est le plan des revenus annuels prévus et les dépenses nécessaires au fonctionnement quotidien de la ville pour une période de 12 mois, 1 an, qui commence au mois de janvier et finit au mois de décembre, donc pour l'année au complet. Ce budget de fonctionnement-là, il est révisé 2 fois dans l'année, le 31 mai et le 30 septembre. Il sert de mécanisme de contrôle budgétaire pour suivre les performances réelles de la ville par rapport aux résultats souhaités. De l'autre côté, le budget d'investissement, c'est un plan triennal des grands projets d'investissement prévus, par exemple les équipements, les bâtiments, et qui ont une durée de vie allant jusqu'à 40 ans. Donc, ce qui n'est pas couvert dans le fonctionnement, il est couvert dans l'investissement qui peut aller jusqu'à 40 ans. Ces projets de budget d'investissement-là sont généralement financés par les dettes à long terme, mais également par les subventions gouvernementales ou les fonds de roulement de la ville, comme Steven a expliqué tout à l'heure. So we know that the municipal budget has to balance the money coming in should be balanced with the money going out to have a zero difference. Alors, le budget de fonctionnement 2023, en ce qui concerne les revenus, la majorité, c'est les taxes municipales. En 2023, on avait un montant total de 72 millions. Si on soustrait la portion reliée à l'agglomération de Montréal de 34 millions, on a un total de 38,1 millions en ce qui concerne la taxation. La ville reçoit également la compensation tenant lieu de taxes, ou ce qu'on appelle les en lieu, pour 1,6 million. Il y a également les frais que les usagers payent. Il y a également les locations, les permis et licences pour 2,7 millions. Un autre montant qui est assez élevé, c'est les droits de mutation qui avait été budgété pour 4 millions en 2023. Dû au contexte économique relié au marché actuel, ben, il a été révisé pour 2,5 millions. Il y a le ralentissement économique au niveau du marché immobilier, d'où la nécessité de réviser ce budget-là à 2,5 millions. La ville reçoit également des subventions gouvernementales à hauteur de 1,5 million. Puis il y a les autres revenus qu'on reçoit pour presque 2 millions, pour un total de 50,1 millions.
Merci. And I'll just mention, I'll be talking a bit more. Andre mentioned about the reduction in terms of the welcome tax. I'll be talking a bit more about that later on in the presentation. But now I want to talk about our tax rate or tax increase every year. If you look at the tax increase over the last several years, our goal has been to keep it at or below the rate of inflation. And we've generally been able to do that, with the exception of last year, well, I should say of December, when we were doing the budget for the current year for 2023. The average tax increase, as you could see, was 5.95%. It's the highest it's been. I don't want to say the highest it's ever been, but certainly in at least the last, I would say probably the last 16, 17 years. If I recall my first year as a councillor, we had a large increase when Saint-Luc demerged. But since then, we've managed to keep it in the rate of, well, you can see here 0% was the lowest, but in the vicinity of 2% and generally lower. The biggest factor was, and I'll talk about some other ones as well, but the biggest factor was the increase of 15.5% in terms of the aglo quote-part, so which is the amount of money we give to the central city or the agglomeration of Montreal. En termes de revenus locaux par activité, André a mentionné les montants, mais juste vous pouvez voir, par exemple, la compensation tenant lieu des taxes, ça c'est pour les hôpitaux, par exemple, et les écoles. C'est presque 2 millions de dollars. Il y a les frais amants, les subventions gouvernementales, les revenus d'intérêt, les revenus divers, permis et licences, produits de la vente de terrain, qui est pas beaucoup, les loisirs, bibliothèques et les CCA, ça c'est le ACC, c'est à peu près 2 millions de dollars. Les services rendus par les travaux publics, le SMU, le SEM, c'est pas beaucoup, mais le plus grand, qui encore c'est un problème pour cette année, c'est le droit de mutation. On avait un budget de 4 millions de dollars. On espère qu'on aurait à 2,5 millions de dollars, mais encore je vais parler un peu plus tard quand on parle des grands problèmes ou les grandes inquiétudes pour le budget pour l'année prochaine. And like I mentioned, I'll talk a bit, like I said, about some of the key issues in terms of our budget consultation context. The first one is the triennial roll. So the roll increased this year by 38.9%. So the biggest factor, it's not necessarily the increase, but it's how our increase compares to the island of Montreal, and in particular, the city of Montreal. We were lucky in the previous roll that came out 3 years before, where we were below the average. This time we're above the average in terms of the city of Montreal and the island of Montreal. What that means is our residents and our city has to pay a higher increase in terms of the agglomeration expense. And this is something that affected us this year and will continue to affect us really for the next 2 years as well. So it is something that concerns us. The agglomeration quote-part, as I mentioned earlier, the increase was 15.5%. This is something our previous treasurer was working on and continues to work on, and our new treasurer as well, working with Montreal. The problem is we often only find out the information late. We hope that they'll give us their potential increase early enough, but often it's only in November, December, when we're deep into our budget process where we find out the increase. And finally, the biggest issue that we're dealing with this year and possibly for next year is in terms of transfer duties. I was reading an article just before I came about sales of homes and condos in Toronto, just as an example, and they were saying it's the lowest number of sales in 25, almost 30 years. So it's something we're seeing here. I've spoken to a few real estate agents as well in Saint-Luc in the vicinity who've also told me it's one of the worst years they've ever seen. Interest rates are high. Many of us are feeling it. I'm feeling it on my own mortgage and line of credit. But it's caused a shortfall that we're predicting of about 1.5 million, and it could possibly more in terms of the welcome tax, which, like I said, we had originally estimated 4 million. And just as a comparison, last year we not only hit 4 million, but we were, I believe, at $8 million. We were about $8 million last year. And by this point in the year, we already had hit $4 million. So now, and we're not anywhere near 2.5 million right now. We're hoping interest rates will go down. We're hoping people will start buying homes again, and this will be much better. But it is something that we are concerned about. And obviously, we'll be sharing more information with residents as the year continues and into next year on this.
Alors, nous avons prévu quelques séries de questions. Ils sont à l'écran, mais nous vous invitons à nous envoyer votre question par email à finance@codesaintluc.org. We invite you to send your question to finance@codesaintluc.org. So the 2023 local expenses by type of expenses is showed on the screen. The biggest part of this is the employees' remuneration and the fringe benefits, up to 25 millions. That is pretty 53% of the budget. The service contract for up to 10 millions, the material and goods for 6 millions. The financing cost, that is the repayment of the capital and the interest, up to 7 millions. The appropriation that comes from the surplus of the last years for 1.5 million to offset the budget, and the other expenses for up to 1.8 millions for a grand total of 50 millions. Donc, les dépenses totales, ici, on peut voir à l'écran un montant de 50 millions en ce qui concerne les revenus, les dépenses locales, et un grand montant qui va jusqu'à 40% de ce budget-là, de 34 millions pour l'agglomération de Montréal, pour un grand total de 84 millions.
Merci, thank you. And in terms of local versus agglomeration expenses or services, I won't go through each point, but just to mention, our local, of course, covers our administration, things like public works, waste collection, public safety, debt services, and the ACC. And the agglomeration are larger services such as police, fire, municipal courts, public transportation like the STM, and 911. So that's roughly how the budget is split. En termes des dépenses locaux, le conseil municipal, c'est une petite partie, mais les plus grands sont l'administration générale, la charge sociale et l'administration non distribuée. Il y a aussi la sécurité publique, il y a à peu près 2 millions de dollars, les travaux publics, qui incluent le déneigement, ça inclut la collection de déchets, c'est à peu près 11 millions de dollars. Oh, pardon, la collection de déchets, c'est avec la gestion d'eau et déchets, ça, c'est à peu près 5 millions de dollars. Les loisirs et le CAC, c'est à peu près 7 millions. La bibliothèque, à peu près 3. Et le service de dette, c'est à peu près 6-7 millions de dollars chaque année. So in terms of external factors and risks, some of them I mentioned, but I'll just go through these because, again, these are the important things we are dealing with, and I guess those that keep us up at night sometimes. So again, the agglomeration quote-par, which we have very little say over, not just us, but the 15 demerged cities in general, because Montreal controls, of course, about 80% of the population, and as of the island of Montreal, or over 80%, and as such controls 80% of the votes on the agglomeration. So even if all the demerged cities vote against, Montreal still, of course, can pass the budget. Climate change is a growing issue. Of course, we've seen it more in terms of heat waves. We saw it this summer in terms of smoke. It's the first time I remember where we had to wear masks outside to deal with smoke, and the city had to cancel some activities and events because of that. And I'll just actually mention in the winter, we're seeing it with more swings in the temperature, going from extreme cold to warm, more freezing rain than we've seen, which is causing issues for our city. In terms of public tender competitions, we have certain projects and certain activities that are tendered or put out for tender, such as snow removal, where we saw a significant increase. We estimate the increased cost of snow removal to the city compared to last year is about $350,000 more. Now we were, I would say, lucky in that we didn't get hit so hard in the last few years because we were on an extended contract when the price of fuel went up. So it sort of hit us in one shot. But it is something we are, we can be the victim of, or can be, I would say, sensitive to. In terms of our water infrastructure, water main breaks, we've invested a lot. We've sleeved over 25% of the pipes. However, that still means 75% are not yet done. So there's always a risk of that. Like I said, inflation and interest rates. So it's the interest rates that have gone up that have caused a reduction in the housing market. And again, the market conditions in terms of sales and assessments, demographics and lifestyle change. We introduced pickleball, for example, this summer. I still haven't gone out to buy my racket, but that's something I'm going to try to do before the end of the summer. This is a new trend, a relatively new trend. The residents asked, and we were able to comply and make it happen. Technological trends, if I think back to 10, 15 years ago, we were not posting on Facebook and Instagram and so on. We didn't have a site like Saint-Luc Ideas, so we're investing a lot more, and we have to invest on the back end as well in terms of security, because it is a risk of ransomware or other types of cyber attack. And the effects of COVID-19 pandemic, the pandemic, I would say, is mostly over. There's still remnants, but we never know if there could be another type of pandemic that comes. And finally, the war in Ukraine has affected the economy in many ways, including inflation and so on. And so this is another factor that affects us. En termes du contexte de la consultation, le but, c'est pour le conseil qu'on veut assurer que tous les résidents ont la possibilité de profiter des services. On essaie d'augmenter les services, d'offrir de nouveaux services, mais on sait que si on y a des nouveaux programmes, il faut ajouter des dépenses supplémentaires dans le budget. Et le problème, c'est si on continue d'avoir tous ces projets, tous ces programmes, il faut voir si certains programmes peuvent être réduits ou supprimés. C'est ça une des questions qu'on doit décider, et on veut avoir votre opinion sur ces questions. Merci.
Merci. Donc, encore une fois, on a ici une question qui peut se poser. On a besoin de votre opinion. On vous invite à nous envoyer vos questions par courriel au finance@commercialcodesaintluc.org. So once again, we ask you to send us your opinion by question to finance@codesaintluc.org. Une autre question, encore une fois. Cette fois-ci, ça concerne les réductions. On demande votre opinion, de nous envoyer vos questions. Ici, c'est marqué quel service peut être réduit en 2024 si nécessaire, tandis que l'autre, c'était what service would you prioritize in the 2024 budget? So let's do an overview concerning the capital investment budget, the PTI. Donc, on a vu le budget de l'opération. Maintenant, on regarde le budget d'investissement qu'on appelle communément le PTI ou le Plan Triennal d'immobilisation. Alors, dans ça, il y a les catégories habituelles qu'on trouve dans les villes communes. On a les infrastructures, on a l'immeuble et l'amélioration locale, on a les véhicules et les machineries et équipements des travaux publics et de l'ingénierie. On a également les ameublements et équipements informatiques pour nous permettre, par exemple, de faire la présentation live présentement. Puis, on a les autres travaux en capital. Alors, à chaque année, on fait l'exercice de planifier le PTI pour les 3 prochaines années. On voit donc ici, en 2023, un total de 13,7 millions. En 2024, prévu l'année passée, ou plutôt cette année, pour 9 millions. Puis 2025, un total de 10,5. Alors, pour l'objet du budget 2024, nous allons devoir faire le même exercice pour le PTI 2024, 2025, 2026. Les chiffres vont être décidés une fois que tous les dépenses et les revenus ont été déterminés. So in terms of capital investment for the 3-year plan 2023, 2024, and 2025, what you see on the screen is the financing of all the previous projects that we saw. We saw that we have a total of 13.7 million in 2023, 9 million in 2024, and 10 million in 2025. These projects are mainly financed by the federal and the provincial grants up to 5.4 million in 2023, but also there are some source of funding up to 2.4 million for a subtotal of 7.9 million. That's for 2023. And the remaining of these are financed by the loans from the provincial governments.
Merci. Je vais continuer avec les priorités pour 2023, pour cette année. Les projets, par exemple, qui étaient investis, c'est les projets de resurfage de routes et trottoirs. Et par exemple, cette année, on a fait un grand travail sur Fleet et Cavendish, sur Merton aussi. En termes de remplacement des conduits de service de plan, et j'ai juste certains numéros devant moi. Alors, cette année, le but, c'est de faire à peu près une centaine et aussi des excavations pneumatiques pour le remplacement de services de plan, le remplacement des conduits de service de plan. On est en train de remplacer toutes les lumières publiques avec les LED. On a fait déjà 700, 800 à peu près. Des travaux dans les parcs et les espaces publics. Par exemple, cette année, on a fini le travail sur dans le parc Kerwin. La piscine extérieure, c'est de faire la rénovation des vestiaires. Pour le CCA, c'est rénovation de le trottoir et de l'enveloppe. Et aussi réapprovisionnement des véhicules vieillissants du travaux publics et la sécurité publique. Chaque année, on achète certains 2-3 véhicules pour que la flotte de véhicules soit pas trop vieux. So this you can see as in terms of the larger categories, in terms of where we've done expenses. So the water infrastructure, about $1.5 million. The biggest one is roads and sidewalks, where we're doing some catch up. The last few years, we've been investing more in the pipes. My goal or philosophy is try to do the pipes first and then the roads after. We have traffic lights and street lights, parks and green space, building and local improvements. And I should say for the ACC, we are without going into too much detail, but we're in a court case, so we're hoping to receive those funds back for the work that is being done on the ACC in terms of the building envelope and the roof. And again, in terms of vehicles, every year we're spending probably about $600,000 to $700,000 on new vehicles. And then there's other office equipment, furniture, and so on. En termes des investissements pour l'année prochaine, pour 2024, c'est presque la même. Je ne vais pas répéter toute la liste, sauf que celle qui est différente, c'est la rénovation de l'enveloppe du bâtiment des travaux publics. On est en train cette année de faire le CCA. Et comme je disais, on veut que ça soit fini très bientôt. Mais pour l'année prochaine, c'est de faire les travaux sur l'enveloppe du bâtiment des travaux publics. Et je vais finir. I'll finish with I'll do one more and then pass it back to Andre. So again, this is where we're predicting for the work next year. So a little bit more on the water infrastructure, although I'll mention that for 2024, we still haven't finalized how much we're going to be spending on the replacement of lead pipes. And I'll talk a bit more about the lead pipes in a few slides. But I'll just say this. What we've been doing the last 2 years is doing a detailed analysis through testing, both of the water itself and pneumatic excavation. So the water testing is when someone will come in and take a few bottles of water, fill them up, and take them back to the lab to be tested in terms of lead content. And then the other one is, again, pneumatic excavation, where they dig a small hole in your front lawn and look at the pipe to see if it is copper or lead, to see if it's just the city side or the resident side or both sides. So we're doing a detailed analysis, and that will give us a better plan in terms of what to do over the next few years and over the next 10 years, because it's going to take many years. But again, you have all the projects, the road and sidewalks, traffic lights, parks, and so on. So this is the general overview for 2024, although I'll mention as well that this is still not finalized. So this is one especially where we're open to feedback. So if you have any comments, and we'll take questions at the end, but you can also email us at finance@saintluc.org.
Merci. Alors, quels sont les principes directeurs du PTI, des plans triennales d'immobilisation? Qu'est-ce qui dicte le choix de ces projets-là? Alors, chaque année, il y a un comité qui décide de quel projet on fait. Ça passe par le directeur et c'est avalisé par le comité d'audit pour passer au niveau du conseil municipal à la fin, dans le processus budgétaire au complet. Des analyses de rentabilisation sont requises donc pour toutes les nouvelles présentations de projets. La priorité la plus élevée est accordée aux projets qui sont liés à des subventions gouvernementales, que ce soit du fédéral ou du provincial, et qui sont requis en raison d'obligations légales ou d'obligations en matière de santé et de sécurité. La deuxième priorité concerne les services professionnels pour les projets d'immobilisation qui auront lieu au cours des 2 prochaines années. Et enfin, on met dans les priorités numéro 3 tout ce qui est routes et trottoirs, les parcs et espaces verts, les propriétés civiques et les véhicules. Afin de planifier plus efficacement les projets d'immobilisation, le PTI, la ville de Côte-Saint-Luc a commencé à travailler sur un plan quinquennal d'immobilisation grâce à l'initiative de notre ancien trésorier Angelo Marino, merci beaucoup. Et de plus en plus de villes également commencent à parler maintenant de PDI, plan décennal d'investissement. Alors, le plan est revu et ajusté à chaque année pour inclure les travaux urgents qui sont imprévus. So the 5-year plan, the PQE, as I just mentioned, foresees that over the next 2 to 3 years, the city of Côte-Saint-Luc will prioritize amongst of these projects, road resurfacing and sidewalks repairs, Côte-Saint-Luc's underpass repairs, library renovations, Côte-Saint-Luc's tennis club renovation, and so on and so forth.
Merci. Je vais juste répéter, les priorités ne sont pas encore finalisées, alors c'est le temps de nous donner votre avis. It's the time to give us your feedback. Alors, je vais continuer un peu à parler sur le projet de remplacement des conduits d'eau, des services en plan. Alors, notre estimation, c'est à peu près 18 à 20 millions, 20 000 dollars, je m'excuse, par adresse. Et nos estimations, c'est si on fait à peu près 75 à 100 par année, ça serait à peu près 1,5 million de dollars. Et en total, on estime que ça va coûter en total près de 30 millions de dollars. On n'a pas encore fait toutes les études là-dessus. On est aussi en train d'avoir des discussions avec le gouvernement provincial et fédéral. Récemment, il y avait un changement en termes des projets de tech. C'est j'ai oublié
le taxe sur les essences et les constructions.
Oui. Alors, il y avait un changement sur cette taxe d'essence qu'on peut utiliser pour le remplacement des conduites d'eau de services en plan. Alors, c'est une bonne nouvelle pour la ville, mais c'est encore un grand montant. Il y a aussi les bâtiments municipaux, par exemple l'hôtel de ville, la bibliothèque. On doit faire les travaux là-dessus. Chaque année, on fait des rénovations sur des parcs, qu'on dit les petits parcs, en termes d'équipement, de terrain de jeu. C'est à peu près 300 000 dollars par année. Et aussi, en termes des coûts de resurfage des routes, nous prévoyons dépenser à peu près 2 millions de dollars par année, même un peu plus. Mais juste pour vous dire, par exemple, un parti de rue, un projet routier moyen, ça coûte à peu près 500 000, 550 000 de dollars. I'll just give a few other examples of our estimates in terms of the capital projects. So in terms of sidewalk construction or reconstruction, we estimate to spend about $600,000 per year. You can probably see it if you drive around the city. I see it even on my own street. There's some no parking signs out there, some markings, and every year we go after the worst sections of sidewalk and try to keep up to date. In terms of traffic lights, and we're estimating to spend about $500,000-$600,000. This is not, I should say, every year, but just certain years when there's work to be done to replace the traffic lights. In terms of LED lights, like I said, we've done about 700-800 so far, but there's in total about 3,000, or about 2,500 to 3,000 street lights in total. So it's going to cost us about $700,000 per year. In terms of trees, we estimate about $200,000 per year. We finally just last year caught up on trees after the over 2,000 trees we had to cut down because of the emerald ash borer. In terms of vehicles, as I mentioned, about $600,000 to $700,000 per year. And then I guess the rest is sort of a catch-all: IT equipment and furniture throughout the city, approximately $200,000 per year. So these are some examples of our capital projects. En termes du contexte, de la Consultation encore, en termes du budget de fonctionnement, en termes par exemple, je m'excuse, en termes des coûts du service de dette à long terme, le but, c'est que ça soit en dessous de 15% du budget de fonctionnement. Et c'était nos buts depuis plusieurs années. Si on dépense trop sur les PTI, ça cause que ça soit au-dessus ou en plus de 15%, et on aime que ça soit moins que 15%. Et en termes des nouveaux projets, le but, c'est d'essayer de trouver des subventions gouvernementales ou notre réserve surplus, et d'essayer d'emprunter moins de 6 millions de dollars chaque année. Et juste pour vous dire, notre dette à long terme, c'est à peu près 50 millions de dollars.
Merci. Alors, quand on aura fait le boucle de la boucle au niveau de la préparation budgétaire et que c'est adopté au niveau du conseil, l'information est diffusée publiquement. Vous pouvez, you can see that on the website of the City of Saint-Luc. You can see the operating and the capital budget. For example, this year you have the 2023 operating budget, as well as the budget presentation and the budget highlights documents that has been mailed to all addresses in Côte Saint-Luc. Alors, on arrive à la fin de cette consultation budgétaire-là. Merci beaucoup pour votre participation. Si vous avez des suggestions ou des questions, encore une fois, vous pouvez nous envoyer vos opinions et questions par email à finance@cotesaintluc.org. You can send us your opinion by email at finance@cotesaintluc.org.
Merci. Thank you. And I'm going to stop sharing. Just here. Just an instant.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to, well, maybe we'll take some questions from those attending. I'm looking at the list here. So if you have a question, si vous avez une question, we'll start with those who are attending at home. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll take your question. Okay, I see, hold on, I see a question. And I have to apologize. Daryl Levine, our Director of Communications, is not here, so I'm doing this, and I see a question here from Nathan. I'm gonna allow you to talk. Go ahead, Nathan. Hopefully we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, I noticed that you're spending $600,000 on sidewalks and $200,000 on trees. Given the given the atrocious state of many of our sidewalks, I would hope that tree planting would be considered a lower priority and that money be diverted to accelerate the sidewalk repair program.
So, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I'll share my thoughts on this one. So again, we've been spending we're spending about triple the amount on sidewalks. Like I said, about 600,000 on sidewalks and 200,000 on trees. If I look at, I have on my screen, I can't share because I'm on two different computers. But as a city, we had to cut down 2,322 trees in the last 10 years. Now, I'm a believer in the trees. We need them for a few reasons. We need them for shade, for heat island effect, keeps the city warmer. I think it keeps our city looking nicer as well. So the truth is, for many years, looking back here actually to 2013, 2014, 2015 even, we were planting very few trees. And we were noticing it. And, when you cut down a few trees here and there, it's not so noticeable. When you cut down 2,000 trees, it's noticeable. And so I would say since I'm looking at my notes here, I would say since 2016, we've really picked it up to try to catch up. Will we need to spend $200,000 a year every year? I don't know. I'm hopeful that, eventually we'll catch up in terms of the heat island effect. I'll just mention also that when you're cutting down a tree that's 20, 30, 40, 50 years old and replacing with a brand new tree, it takes several years. And I have a tree planted in front of my house that was one of those trees that was planted along with many residents. I mean, it's a decent sized tree now, but it's nowhere near as big as some of the trees were before. But I guess I would say the feedback is well heard. But I would say in terms of sidewalks, like I said, we're spending 600,000. I don't know if we can spend, even if we wanted to spend more than that, I'm not sure if we would, because I think what we were going to probably do, and I should mention that the 600,000 is just on dedicated sidewalks. Keep in mind, when we're spending about $2-3 million a year on roads, that includes many sidewalks as well. So there's a lot of sidewalks that are done at the same time, but it's a separate, not to get too confusing, but it's a separate budget because the sidewalk is a contractor that just does concrete. The roads are done by a contractor that does the asphalt and the sidewalks. But definitely, I appreciate the feedback. Any other questions, Nathan, before we check if there's any others?
No, thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. Merci, merci d'être parmi nous. All right. And I know I see quite a few of you, but I'm not sure if. Hold on. So like I said, I see we have a few other people on Zoom. Any other questions? All right, I'll go to the audience. I see a few shy faces in the audience. I know not everyone is necessarily, well, what we'll do, so just I guess to mention, we will post this, we'll post this on our website. On va mettre sur le site web de la ville de Côte-Saint-Luc. You can watch this over and over again. We'll also be posting the PowerPoint. On va mettre la présentation avec la question. You can feel free to, I see I have one more question. I'll just finish this sentence. So we'll be posting the PowerPoints as well. So you can feel free to email us with your responses or any other questions. Excuse me. And I see here we have Helen. So hold on, I'm gonna allow you. Helen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Helen.
So yeah, I posted it on the Q&A, but I guess I'm not sure I did it right.
Oh.
But
sorry, I was looking on the attendees. I didn't see that on the Q&A.
That's
Yeah.
okay. So
Go ahead.
I just wanted to know, because we brought this up before with I think public security or the other department with regards to the safety. I live on Regal Street, and there's a lot of speeding happening on Regal, North Luke, and then that corner that turns, the North Luke Regal corner, where it's very dangerous there because there's an entrance to a park, the park there, and in the past, they would put like, you know, those posts like in the middle of the street to try and discourage people from, I guess, turning too quickly, but that wasn't very successful. And this year, there was absolutely nothing done. And I'm wondering if there's anything in the budget for putting a speed bump, you know, on North Luke and or Regal to discourage speeders.
So it's a very good question. So I'm just, as I'm talking again, I'm trying to look at my other screen here. So I can share that we actually just had a brief discussion on this at our last, what we call our ID committee. So we just actually, because it was Councillor Kajaski who brought this up, who chairs the traffic committee. So he actually just brought up to add an extra 4, or sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think 5, an extra 5 speed bumps that were beyond the budget, because it's a concern that's been brought up by many residents. I'll be honest, I'm just looking quickly. I don't see, so it's on North Luke and Regal, that's where you were saying?
Yeah, we would need,
So,
yeah.
So I have to be honest, I'm just looking quickly on my other screen. You know, I have a map here with sort of the, where the new speed bumps are located. I don't see it on this list, but what I will do is this. So any question about speed bumps usually goes to the traffic committee first. So the traffic committee, which is made up, of course, of the Councillor Kajaski, as mentioned, we have our traffic engineers. There's often a representative from the police on there. And what they do is they do an analysis. Usually they'll do a traffic study. What the city does is we put a small little sensor on the road, so small you probably won't even notice it. They put a small sensor on the road, they leave it there for about a week. And what this sensor does is it actually measures the number of cars that pass by. And then after the week, they remove it, and then it's punched into the computer, and we get a full analysis, number of cars, not just the number of cars per day, but literally in half-hour blocks. The average speed of the car, the maximum speed, minimum speed, and so on.
Oh,
and
so
then once
they are measuring speed. Okay.
So sorry, they are. I can't speak to your exact intersection, but I'm saying, so I can't speak to North Luke and Regal, but I can tell you we do this on a regular basis. So we put these speed sensors down on roads. So what I'll do, like I said, I'll pass it on to the councillor and I'll pass it on to our traffic engineer. I'll ask them to do a study. So that's the first step. Once they do the study, then they do the analysis of the data, then it goes to the traffic committee. The only thing I'll mention is we don't put the sensors down in the winter time, because the snow plows, it's small, but still sensitive device. So if a snow plow passes over it, it would destroy them. And these devices are quite expensive, and we want to keep them in good shape. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass it on. We should be able to get the traffic study done before the end of the season. However, just to manage expectations, even if it's deemed necessary, it probably is too late for this season, because I know, like I said, we just got, and I'm just looking at the associate city managers in the audience. Yeah, it's too late. I have to say it's too late, but I would say traffic calming has been a priority. I know it's something in District 4 that I represent, where I'm very cognizant of it. In terms of speed bumps, in terms of bollards, I mean, we're trying to find that balance. But definitely I took note, and we'll pass it on. And
that would be great, because we've been living here for 12 years, and we made this request almost at the beginning, the first year we were here, because we noticed, and we had young children at the time. And like I said, not much was done. The only thing was they put that, those posts that you can ride over it. Everybody was bumping into it and crashing into it. So that didn't work, and nothing else was done. So it would be great if we can get that ball rolling again. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so no problem. I'll just, well, thank you, Helen, for the question. I'll just add 1 or 2 points. So just to mention, I'm not an expert. I can share in my district, in District 4, for example, there are some spots where the traffic engineers have put bollards, and there's some spots where they put speed bumps, and usually I leave it up to the engineers to decide that. And I find there's pros and cons for each, but I think each is effective. And I'll just add and thank you to our our former treasurer just passed me this because I didn't have it so handy. The city spends, just for you to know, about $90,000, $90,000 par année. So $90,000 for traffic calming devices. So that includes the bollards, that includes the speed bumps and humps and so on. So it is one of our priorities, and definitely something we're going to continue to do. And like I said, I'll pass on the information about the intersection you mentioned.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Helen. Let's close that. So before we conclude, I know we have a few shy faces in the audience, and I see some familiar names. I see a name I won't mention, but I'll just add that one of the points that came up, I believe it was last year, the year before, was a question about Rabin Park and some work that was proposed there. And based on feedback we got, we delayed that project, and we're doing more consultation. So I just want to mention, we're always open to feedback. We appreciate it, and we try to follow through. So with that, I'll thank you. Un grand merci à vous tous d'être venus. Thank you for joining us. Merci encore à notre nouveau trésorier. Merci aussi à l'ancien trésorier. Thank you to our associate city manager, Tanya Bravich, who is also joining us and giving feedback. Again, thank you to those joining in person and those joining at home. And for those who watch on the replay on YouTube, all the best. Thank you. Merci.
Merci.